On the 10th page of the printouts, we are holding in the middle of the first paragraph of the page, and we were explaining that to be able to go from a level of the Yitzias Mitzrayim of Pesach, which was only something that affected the Nefesh Elokis, it didn't affect the Nefesh Bahamis. To be able to come to Matan Torah, we need to get the Nefesh Bahamis on board also. The proof is that Nefesh Bahamis wasn't affected is because Kibarach Ha'am, that if the Yidden were in such a state that after the initial revelation that took place of Nigla Aleim Melch Malcham Lach Makadosh Baruch Hu Ge'olam, they were still susceptible to doing wrong and to returning to Mitzrayim and wanting to return to Mitzrayim and so on. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't say that they were leaving Mitzrayim forever. And that's why it says also that was Meshcheni, was a level, first of all, of the Meshcheni, just the Nefesh Elokis, and that's why it was only Medalig Alaharim, that he was skipping just with one foot, which means that it was only over the level of Zeir Anpin. That was the revelation. It didn't reach all the way down to Malchus, which was necessary to be able to affect the Nefesh Bahamis as well, the level of Acharecha Narutza. So to be able to reach that, we need to have Sfiras Ha'omer. That's what we're going to explain, how we get from Meshcheni, where it's only in the singular, talking about the Nefesh Elokis, that Nefesh Elokis was affected by Yetzias Mitzrayim, to a state of Acharecha Narutza, that we will run both the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamis. So we are holding on, as I said, on the 10th page, 218, towards the end of the first paragraph. The line begins Hiyois. It's beneath the line that begins with the parentheses Kehem Shchakosov. So middle of the line, the Rebbe explains that this is the avoid of Sfiras Ha'omer, to bring the Nefesh Bahamis into the program as well, into the picture as well. V'zeu inyan avoid of the Sfiras Ha'omer. This is the avoid of Sfiras Ha'omer, the Omer B'Misayrim. First of all, it's indicated by the fact that the carbon Omer was brought from barley. Like it's brought down the Gemara, Kol Menachas Bois Chitim. All the Menachas, there was all different types of carbon mincha that were brought in the Beis HaMikdash, like we learn in Chumash Vayikra. But they came from wheat flour. Chutz me mincha soita, mincha Ha'omer, except for the mincha of a Saita woman, that her carbon mincha comes from barley, and also minchas Ha'omer shaboy soidim, that both of them come from barley. That's soidim hu meichel behem, that barley is animal food, and the Gemara explains that the animal food has to do with the carbon Saita, because she acted in an animalistic way, therefore her carbon is an animal food. But what does the carbon Ha'omer have to do with animal food? Because it's also indicating what we have to do now during the time of the Omer, because during the time of the Omer, with Sfiras Ha'omer, which begins with the bringing of the carbon Omer, is about working with the animal within us, the Avodah Nefesh Bahamis. And for this very reason, since we're working with the Nefesh Bahamis, not like in Yetzias Mitzrayim, where it was a revelation to change from above, and that came down primarily to the Nefesh Elokis. So therefore, therefore the Sfira is not counting down. You don't say there's 49 days left to Matan Torah, 48 days left to Matan Torah, 3 days left to Matan Torah. You're counting down to a specific time. Shouldn't you count downwards? But no. The count is indicating the avodah, and therefore you start off Hayom Aleph. We're in the first day, meaning we're in the first step, going from below to above to transforming the Nefesh Bahamis, and then Beis Yomim B'chul, and now we're the second step in it. Kivin Shein Yonah Shel Sfiras Ha'omer, avodah the halos of Nefesh Bahamis, since the idea of the Sfiras Ha'omer is the avodah of elevating the Nefesh Bahamis, v'hasfira hi ba'ofen. Another point of Sfiras Ha'omer is that it's in such a way that the previous avodah is not negated, it's not done with, it's not over, but it also becomes part of the avodah that follows it. Like you're building something. So you first lay the brick or the log or whatever it is on the bottom, then you lay something on top of it. You don't say, okay, I'm holding by the second level, we can take away the bricks from the lower level. It doesn't work that way. Everything builds on everything else. So therefore, we say today is the first day of the Omer, but then we say not we don't say it's the second day of the Omer, we say it's 2 days of the Omer. Since in the second day he has also included in it the avoid of the first day, along with the avoid of the second day, because that's the whole point. It's a matter of transformation and working with nefesh habahamis and going up higher and higher. Until he reaches to the highest level, he has now the avodah, all of the 7 weeks. It's a 7-week course. He has the 7 weeks, and not just the 7 weeks or the 7 Shabbos Tmimis. He has 7 complete weeks, whole weeks. You could say, okay, I have part of the week, it's sufficient. In some things we say, miktas hayom kekulei, part of a day is like the entire day. No, we have a complete week. Until you have that it's being counted to you, and I'm going to talk about this being illuminated to you, even the 50th day, even though we don't actually count the 50th day, but it's considered that we have attained the 50th day through the counting of the 49 days. So we say Tisfru Chamishim Yom. Second paragraph on the 10th page, V'zel Klolos in the Avodah. That's the general idea of the Avodah. Instead of that the spirit of the animal descends downward. So we do just the opposite. The animal wants to go down, we take the animal, not just we stop it from going down, we take it in the other direction, we take it upwards. You need to raise up the Omer. To raise up the Nefesh HaBahamis. Maybe you could bring a silly example for this. You want to have an animal to follow you somewhere, you pull its food. You want a horse to follow you, you take the carrots along or whatever it is, or the hay, and to make the horse follow wherever the food is. The animal food is the Omer, so you raise up the Omer, the animal raises up as well. I haven't seen this anywhere in Chassidus. That's just done. The idea of raising up the Omer is to elevate Nefesh HaBahamis. How do we raise up the Nefesh HaBahamis? We have to bring down the level of Makif below. If you remember, we said before that there's the idea of medalig alahorim and mekapis alagvois, that we're bringing from a level that's higher than the mountains and higher than the hills, higher than Zohar, higher than Malchus. We're bringing down into those spheres. So he says, Baruch, like it's explained at length, that this is done through drawing down the makif. We are elevating the Nefesh HaBahamis in a similar vein, by drawing down the level of the makifim that's above, all the way into Spheres HaMalchus, not just into Ze'er Ampim, because that would only affect the Nefesh Elokis, like we said in the previous paragraph. By days of Poyel, through drawing down the level of the makif, we affect that it should be that we will wave and raise up the Omer. Now this Omer becomes called by this name, the Omer of waving, the Omer of raising. That becomes its identity. That he raises up and elevates the Omer until he reaches the 7 complete weeks, meaning Birur b'Sheva Midis, the refinement of the 7 emotional traits, K'moishem b'Sfiras HaMalchus, the way they are all in the sphere of Malchus. That's the indication of calling it Sheva Shabbos Tmimis. The idea of Shabbos is going on the 7th day, It corresponds to Malchus. Just like the 6 days. First day has to do with Chesed, second day, Monday has to do with Gvura, and so on. So Shabbos has to do with Malchus. You say Sheva Shabbos is Tmimis, that means you complete Malchus. You fulfill Malchus. You make all the 7 Midas the way they are in Malchus perfected. Because like we said before, Malchus is the level that impacts the Nefesh Bahamis. Having the 7 Midas above, that we had already. The Shisha Midas, the Ampin, we had that already by Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's not the issue. The issue is Malchus should be Mekapetz ala Gvois, that even Malchus should get it. And also, what you call Midah Klul Mesheva, in Malchus the 7 Midas, the way every one of the 7 Midas in Malchus has them at the other 7. Now this means after we already had the skipping over the mountains during Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the level of Zeir Anpin, like we said before. He reaches a Matan Torah to the level of jumping over the hills with both of his feet. Also the level of the Gvois. We said before that the Harim, the mountains that goes on the Ovis, the Gvois, which is the hills, it's referring to the mothers. That in general, the level of the feminine, the level of mothers, that's the level of Sfiras HaMalchus. So that's why Matan Torah, which is coming at the culmination of the work with this Midas, the way they are all perfected in Malchus, which is what's necessary to impact the Nefesh Bahamis, it's called Mekapetz ala Gvois, because Gvois has to do with the mothers. Amnam Hamshach the Mekapetz ala Gvois Malchus Nefesh Bahamis, that Hamshach, to be able to reach that level of jumping over the hills, the level of Malchus Nefesh Bahamis, who Davkai, they should be in time, Yeshna avoided the Sfiras HaOmer canals only when in the meantime there is the avoid of Sfiras HaOmer, then we could reach to the level of Mekapetz ala Gvois, we could be Mamshach in the Malchus, we could be drawing it down to the Nefesh Bahamis. In such a way that it comes down to it internally, as the Snempdurch, it permeates until it remains there constantly, not like by Yetzias Mitzrayim that we said that was only a temporary thing that impacted, and everything went out of Mitzrayim, even the wealth and so on, and for sure Nefesh Bahamis in the body, but that was only a temporary thing, we said. Matan Torah was bring it down, but Pnimius, how come? Because you had the whole entire work of the 7 weeks, the 7 Midas, the way they are in Malchus, to be transformed over the time of Sfiras HaOmer. Second paragraph on 219. V'hinei, ha'idei avoida, zu the Sfiras HaOmer magia lacher, zel mekapetz ala Gvois, shemekapetz shtei raglav hanal. Through this avoida of Sfiras HaOmer, we reach afterwards to skipping over the hills, that he skips with both of his feet, like we said before. V'hainu hagilui gamba Malchus v'Nefesh Bahamis, the revelation also in Malchus and in Nefesh Bahamis. V'hagilui atzmai u'b'chinas mekapetz shelamayla u'b'chinas halicha v'alachas kama v'kam b'chinas hamidah. What type of level of revelation is this? This is a revelation that's called jumping. And jumping is higher level than just going and traveling. And how much more so, if it's higher than traveling, it's even higher from standing. It's brought down to Amodim, Shaydeh, avoid the Sfiras HaOmer, Nas, Hamshach Sakeser, through the avoid of Sfira. We said earlier, we said in different Amodim, it's drawn down the level of Keser. Ubechinas HaKeser. And the level of Keser, like it's explained in previous Mamorim from that year, is like Keser, and the rest of the levels is the same difference like jumping and skipping is versus walking and standing. So he explains specifically which spheres are they. The sphere of Chachma is called traveling in comparison to the spheres that are below Chachma, that they are called only standing. The level of Keser is a level of skipping and jumping in comparison even to the level of Chachma, and for sure in comparison to the spheres below Chachma. On Shavuos, it's the drawing down the Keser to both. Hein Lazar, both to the Midas of Atzilus and even the Chabad of Atzilus, Vehein LaMalchus, and also to Malchus. Before Baruch Kabbalah, explain the Kabbalah at length about Shavuos being the time of the Keser coming down to all these different levels. Since we're Matan Torah was a drawing down the level of Keser, now also the preparation for this, that this is the elevation of Spheres HaMalchus and all of its details, like we said before. So too, in the general Avodah, that we need to do the avodah in a way of we will run. Lashon Rabim in the plural, ha'avodim and nefshel kisvam nefshel bamis, the avodah with the nefshel kis nefshel bamis. So all of these things, the working through all the 7 times 7 levels in Malchus, and in general working with the nefshel bamis, has to be done in the spirit of jumping and skipping. It has to be in a way of skipping and jumping beyond measure and beyond boundary. That is the type of way how we have to do this avodah. Now, everything has to have an empowerment from above. Every Yisrustal Asat Chassidus brings down must be preceded by an Yisrustal Eilah. The empowerment for doing all the avodas following in a way of beyond measure, in a way of jumping. So that comes Mechaga Pesach, from Pesach, the Ozi Ascholos, Avodas, Achona, Lamatan Torah, Sfiras HaOmer. That's the beginning of the avodah, of the preparation for Matan Torah, the avodah preparation for Matan Torah, which is Sfiras HaOmer. Like we're soon going to explain, because Pesach means skipping over. So it says, that says that you should count from the morrow of the Shabbos. The morrow of the Shabbos is referring to Pesach. Once you have Pesach, then you have Sfiras HaOmer, meaning that Pesach is empowering Sfirim. Why is Pesach empowered, this avoid of skipping and jumping in Sfirim? Because of Pesach, Lashon Pirusha, Lashon Dilug Kvitza Kanal, because Pesach's meaning is in the word skipping and jumping, like we said before. Since initially, what was Pesach? Going out of the constraints, going out of the boundaries, that's the inner meaning of Yitzias Mitzrayim. So in the same way how I'm breaking out of boundaries on Pesach, Sfiras HaOmer is not going to be any less. It's a continuation of that breaking out, of being unlimited. From this comes out afterwards in all of his services, also throughout the time of Sfiras HaOmer. Only when in every single type of avodah during Sfira, it's recognizable, the idea of the skipping and the jumping. This is only then is the avodah in its ultimate perfect state. The Rebbe doesn't let us rest. He doesn't say, okay, Yitzias Mitzrayim was so powerful. Yes, we're getting ready for Matan Torah, which is also very powerful and maybe even more powerful. But now let's take a breather. He says, no. You went out of Mitzrayim. You got to keep up that power, that breaking out of boundaries. The whole Sfiras HaOmer has been Machras Hashab. So the morrow of the Pesach, jumping and skipping, and the whole idea of breaking out of boundaries still. This is also what was explained in a previous Maimer of that year, or in previous Maimorim of that year. In the footnote, he brings like multiple Maimorim that the Rebbe spoke about this idea. As memont von a Yidden shekol avidos of Yiu derech dilug kfitza, that was demanded from a Jew that all of his services should be in the way of skipping and jumping. Heinaini and the Carbon Pesach, both the idea of the Carbon Pesach hachon Yitzias Mitzrayim. Carbon Pesach was brought as a preparation. It was brought on the 14th. So that was already called the Carbon Pesach, meaning even before Hashem skipped over, we were asked and we were told to do an avodah of Pesach, of skipping over, of jumping out of our boundaries. And both during the going out of Mitzrayim, when Hashem skipped over and took us out of the boundaries, for sure, it's breaking out of the boundaries, out of limitations. Yom Tzeis Chomer Mitzrayim, you're going out of the land of Mitzrayim. Vehem b'shas Matan Torah in the Tabno lekimal harazeh, and also during Matan Torah, when it's the conclusion of Yetzias Mitzrayim, because Moshe Rabbeinu was told, when you take the Eden out of Mitzrayim, so then you will serve Hashem on this mountain. So that means they were also obviously going to break out the barriers then as well. And also during the preparations of Matan Torah Sfiras Omer, for sure you had that idea. So the Rebbe says, in a similar vein, by the preparations for it, also has to be in such a way of jumping and skipping and breaking out of boundaries. Now, according to this, all the avoidance has to be the skipping and jumping. Is to be understood what was explained previously. That the idea of Sfiras Ha'omer is like it says, you shall count for you. In the previous Maimon, he explains that why it says Sfartam Lachem, Sfartam is already saying you shall count. Why it say to you, you should count to you. It should be drawn down, it should illuminate within you the level of the Makif. Though he's still in the midst of the avodah with the nefesh habahamis. That's the point of lachem. To you, your nefesh habahamis, your being that's inside of you. So then also you have to draw down the spheres in the you. Sfartem, which goes on the spheres, has to go in the lachem. Even though I'm not yet by the level of Matan Torah, even though I haven't yet finished my avodah with nefesh habahamis throughout Sfiras Ha'omer. From this Sfartem Loshen Evan Sfar Sapir Shasfiras Yirboy. The way the Amshach has to be is in a way that it's not hidden, it's not concealed, but in the way of the Sfartem, from the sapphire stone that the Sfiras have to shine in him. This shining and revelation that takes place during Sfiras Ha'omer in the Nefesh Bahamis, still while they're in the middle of the Avodah, is a preparation for the revelation that's going to come from above in a way of jumping over the hills. That we said before is specifically referring to Shavuos, whereas Medalag al Harim, skipping over the mountains, is referring to Yetzias Mitzrayim. Last page. We can connect the fact that all the avodas have to be in a way of skipping and jumping, and with the famous axiom of the one whose birthday. The Rebbe said this on Beis Iyar. The Rebbe Marash, as the Welt sagt, as mekanet arunter darf na riber. If the world says you can't go under, you go over. And ich sage, as man darf noch hat klar riber, and I say one has to initially go over. That idea of going over is literally jumping over the barriers, not dealing with the limitations. That's in general what it says. You shall count for you from the morrow of the Shabbos, immediately after the first day, which is Pesach, is called the first day. The point of the first day of Pesach is about the King of Kings Hashem, and his very glory in essence became revealed. In such a way that this revelation affected, that he redeemed them. And we said the redemption was for all things. Both his godly soul and his body and his part of the world. That's why it says afterwards they will go out with a great wealth. From that, we take it further to the Nefesh Bahamis in the Megillah, from this revelation of the skipping and jumping that we said in general, both parts of the pasuk is going on Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the Yetzias Mitzrayim that happened through this revelation comes out afterwards and is drawn down afterwards. In all of them, the godly soul and the animal soul, the avodah beyond measure and boundary. Even though afterwards there had to be the beginning of a organized type of avodah, day after day, with the animal soul, like it was explained previously, the reason why it's necessary for the day after day, step by step, starting from 1, not counting down from 49, Because the effect of the revelation that Hashem became revealed over them only continued after Pesach, only concerning Nefesh Elokis, like it says, he drew me in the singular. As opposed to the animal soul that dissipated, that disappeared. Afal became, despite the fact that the revelation from above did not impact the Nefesh Bahamis afterwards, it's recognizable daily, the skipping and the jumping of going out of Mitzrayim, like it says, you should remember the day of you going out of the land of Mitzrayim, all the days of your life, like explained at length earlier. So it means the daily thing, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the skipping and jumping. This is talking about every day of the year there has to be the Yetzias Mitzrayim, going out of boundaries, the skipping and jumping. How much more so when you're talking about the time of the preparation of the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was serving the Eibishter on this mountain. So how much more time in that, how much more so in that time period there has to be the avoid of going out of the constraints and boundaries. Because through doing his service in such a manner, so then all of the person's own matters, his personal life, his needs and so on, becomes in the way of skipping and jumping. Hashem skips over the mountains and jumps over the hills, like it says concerning the giving of the Torah. Until it becomes the voice of my beloved. Behold, it is coming, like the explanation of the Medrash, that Ba isn't going on the future tense. The Koi Alagula Sid is referring to the future redemption of Bekar of Mamish and soon Mamish. Shazi Bay from the Malal Al Harm Kapsal voice of the Mashiach that came, and then it will be skipping over the mountains and jumping over the hills through Mashiach. Yahweh will come and redeem us and lead us upright to our land.